Now we are grateful to bring in Phil Perry, a Comcast Sports Net Patriots reporter. He can be seen on Quick Slants with Tommy Kern, and you can follow him on Twitter at Phil A. Perry.
Hello.
Hi. All right.
Hey, sorry, guys.
Yeah, no problem. So we don't want to take too much of your time away. We only have 2 or 3 questions out of us.
No problem at all.
All right. So my first question for you is, from what player, if any, do you expect to have a breakthrough year this season for the Pats?
Yeah, that's an interesting one because there's a lot of candidates. And so, we know that guys like Rob Gronkowski, if he's healthy, Julian Edelman, if he's healthy, Tom Brady when he gets back on the field. Those guys are going to be pretty good. But, and the roster is loaded with, I would say, well-known commodities. A lot of veteran players who have experience in the league and proven track records. But in terms of some of the younger guys who could have breakout years, I would say one player who has caught my attention so far in terms of training camp practices and preseason games that we've seen, I think Malcolm Brown, defensive tackle, former first-round pick from last year, with a very good rookie year last year, could take that next step into going from a good pro and a surprisingly good rookie, in my opinion, with what he showed last year, to a very good consensus, one of the best in the league defensive tackles, just because he's so athletic for a guy his size, and he does everything they want him to do, no matter the situation. He can hold up at the point of attack. He can anchor down, play against the run. He could even get upfield a little bit if they only want to rush 2 or 3 guys and drop a bunch of defensive backs. He can do so much within the scheme of this defense that Bill Belichick and Matt Patricia put together every single week. And I think he has a chance to get into that echelon of defensive tackles when you're talking about Pro Bowl guys, all-pro guys. I don't know if this year is going to be the year that he gets there, but I don't think he's too far off.
So, as you mentioned, Malcolm Brown, do you think that his excelling at training camp led to the release of Terrence Knighton and in the past and prior to Dominique Easley?
Yeah, I don't know if it was a direct correlation there, because I do think that if they felt like Terrence Knighton could contribute in the defense, that they would have been able to keep both guys. I think what happened with Knighton was that he didn't show the kind of growth in terms of his understanding of the defense that they were expecting. He came in here and he has played a certain style basically throughout his pro career, which is, yes, he's a 355-pound behemoth of a guy, but he's not necessarily somebody who's only there to eat up double teams and hold his ground at the line of scrimmage. He likes to get upfield and get after the quarterback. And if you remember that AFC Championship game from 2013 when Knighton was on the Broncos, he really ruined the game for the Patriots that day, and he gave Logan Mankins a heck of a time on the interior there. So he is no stranger to getting upfield and getting after the quarterback, but that's not necessarily what the Patriots wanted him to do. They wanted him to be able to two-gap, which is where he takes on a block, is able to see the ball carrier behind the offensive lineman, shed the block and read and react and make a play. He was sort of getting washed up in some of these plays where these stretch runs and screens and things like that, where the offensive lineman would move one way, he would go too hard with them and almost take himself out of the play. And so he just didn't show enough development in that sense. He was in good shape. He was fine physically. And there was room for him on the roster, I think, if he performed well, but he just never got what they were trying to teach him here. And so I think that's why he's gone. It's not necessarily because of Malcolm Brown. Malcolm Brown was going to have a significant role regardless. I think Alan Branch is going to be around here for the season and have another significant role after being a starter essentially all of last year. Vincent Valentine is a kid they drafted who plays the same position as well. So they have 3 guys there that are going to contribute, and I think Knighton could have fit into that mix too. He just didn't pick things up the way they wanted him to.
So you mentioned Terrence Knighton, who obviously got cut, and most people would say that's a surprising cut. So since obviously the Patriots have to get down to a 53-man roster, do you think there's any other surprising names we could see get cut in the next coming weeks?
I think there are, and it depends on what you consider a surprise, but, I don't think, say somebody like Martellus Bennett, I really don't think he's going to get cut. You never know with some of these new guys. You never know how they fit in, if they're understanding the offense, yada, yada, yada. But that would be a shocking cut to me. I don't think something to that level is going to happen. The guys that would be maybe the quote-unquote surprise cuts are guys whose names Patriots fans remember and already know. So guys like Aaron Dobson, some people may think that's a surprise cut because he's a former second-round pick. The receiver group is pretty injury-plagued right now, and they have a long history of injuries. A lot of those guys do, and Danny Amendola, Julian Edelman, Malcolm Mitchell. You're talking about some guys with some pretty significant health issues that have racked up over the course of the last few years. And so maybe you'd think, okay, well, Dobson's been in the system for a little while. At least he could hang. I could certainly see him being cut. I know it's been reported that the Patriots may be trying to trade him. I think that's something that's happening with a lot of players on rosters all over the league right now, especially with all the roster movement that's going on. Teams are trying to figure out, hey, can we make a trade? Can we swing something, try to pick up, maybe some compensation for a guy that may get released otherwise? I think Dobson could fit into that camp. Another name that people will recognize because he's been here for the last few years, but I think could be elsewhere by the time cuts are all said and done, would be Brandon Bolden. And I think, he's been a good special teams player over the course of the last few years for the Patriots, and he has filled in admirably at times as a running back, both in that passing back role that the Patriots really like to use with guys like Dion Lewis and Danny Woodhead back in the day and Kevin Falk. But he can also sub in for some of those big backs and run hard, even though he's not a huge guy. He fights through contact pretty well, or he has over the course of his career. I just don't know if he gives them enough offensively. He has struggled as a running back this summer in training camp and in the preseason. We've seen him have several drops in training camp practices in the passing game, and then he fumbled a couple of weeks ago against the Bears, was pulled from that game as a running back, and hasn't taken a running back snap in a preseason game since. And so, for that reason, I just don't know if he gives you enough on the offensive side as well as on special teams. When you combine all those things, even though he would contribute in the kicking game, I'm not sure he's worthy of a roster spot right now as well. So not necessarily huge shockers there, but guys that people would know that may not be here in a couple of weeks.
Sure. That actually segues right into my next question. What are your thoughts on the chance of LeGarrette Blount staying on the roster?
I think they're really good right now, and it's because he's had a good preseason. And these preseason games, as much as people I think would like to get rid of them, I know John Harbaugh said recently after Ben Watson went down with an Achilles tear, he wouldn't mind if preseason games went away forever, and all they did was work with scrimmages and these really diligently scheduled practices where they can work on all the situational football they want. But preseason games can be valuable, and I think they have been very valuable for LeGarrette Blount because they're live hitting, and that's really the only way to get a good sense of what a running back like LeGarrette Blount can give you, because his game is so predicated on running through contact, running between the tackles where there's live blocking going on, where there's defensive linemen that are actually trying to put a hit on you and bring you down. That's not something that you see in these training camp practices, even in these joint practices, and even if they sometimes say they're going to go live for a period or two, it's not the same as the preseason. And so those games have really benefited Blount because he's had some electric runs. We saw him hurdle a guy in Carolina the other day. Not necessarily what you'd be teaching players that I'm experienced is teaching these guys as a running backs coach when training camp is underway. But he's a creative runner. He still runs really hard coming off a season-ending injury from last season, and I know he's getting up there in age. But right now he looks like their best big back on the roster. I know Tyler Gaffney's had his moments, but I don't think Gaffney is quite as electric with the football in his hands as LeGarrette Blount can be. That doesn't mean that Gaffney won't make the team. I think he has a chance as a backup. But right now LeGarrette Blount is your number one lead back. When it comes to the passing offense, when Dion Lewis is healthy, that's his thing. That'll be James White's thing for the first few weeks of the season until Lewis is ready to go. But Blount, when they want to pound an opposing defense, a defense that runs on too many defensive backs, and the Patriots feel like they can take advantage of that by going big and going heavy up front and putting LeGarrette Blount in the backfield, that's their best bet to pick up yardage. So I think his spot is safe on this roster.
So, obviously, you mentioned that Blount's our best runner, and, I don't think Blount's really all that good from what I've seen over the last couple of years here in New England. Sure, he'll beat up on teams like the Colts, but there's so many times where I've seen him just get stuffed at the one. And I was just wondering, with him being your best runner, how much do you see the Patriots leaning on the run game this year, especially with the first 4 weeks being quarterbacked by Jimmy Garoppolo?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, I don't mean to put LeGarrette Blount in the Pro Bowl or anything right now, but when it comes to being a big guy, 250 pounds, creating yards after contact, he's the best they have. And so if they go up against the Cardinals and they see a defense that is going dime down in and down out, and they have a bunch of safeties and cornerbacks on the field, I would not be shocked at all if they were an extra offensive lineman out there. How many times do we hear it? I don't know how often you can hear it on the television broadcast, but if you're at these games, it feels like there are certain games where when they decide to run the football, it's every other snap or every other drive. On every snap, you're hearing the officials say, number 71 is eligible, or number 64 is eligible, or number 61 is eligible, because they're bringing in this extra offensive lineman to essentially play tight end, but he's not there to catch a pass. He's there to just pound the other team in the running game. And so if the Cardinals decide to do that, if they want to go dime, if they want to make Jimmy Garoppolo face some tough decisions in the secondary, I think they would not hesitate in the least to hand it off to LeGarrette Blount, use Jimmy White in the running game as well, maybe a little bit. They've said that they're going to try to get him a little bit more work in between the tackles. Maybe you bring Tyler Gaffney in if he's a fresh set of legs for you. But that would not be an issue for them in the least. They are a game plan offense, which means every single week it could be something different, and it's going to depend on what the defense does. Not really going to depend all that much on what the Patriots decide to do. I'm sure they would like to dictate things if they can, but they have no problem being flexible and changing on the fly. That's been a tenet of Josh McDaniels' offenses over the course of his career here. And I don't think even though it's Jimmy Garoppolo, I don't know if it's going to change all that much. I still think they want to have that flexibility on the offensive side of the ball.
So you mentioned the O-line, and big news is Dante Scarnecchia is back in the fold for this year. So do you think he makes as big a difference on the O-line as Patriots fans crack him up to be?
Well, we'll find out. I don't know if he's going to be a game changer. I mean, there's only so much he can do. He's only one man, and he's a coach. So there's only, when it comes to on the field, I think he will help because I think he's so focused on the fundamentals, and I think he's been very focused on preparing a starting 5 offensive line unit from the early going here in training camp, that's going to help this unit as a whole. I think they were entirely too okay with going into the season and having a bunch of guys that they thought were versatile and could play a bunch of different positions, and they all could work together if they needed to at the drop of a hat. But it's not that easy. I think they were too reticent to stick with 5 of their best players and run them out there down in and down out. And it led to some consistency issues last year, which I think in turn led to some communication issues up front. I think a lot of that stuff's going to be ironed out because really from the beginning of training camp, they have had the same 5, or they've tried to, out there on the field at the same time. And so it's Nate Solder at left tackle, Joe Tooney, the rookie 3rd-round pick out of NC State. He has been the left guard since day 1 of training camp and even going back into OTAs in the spring. David Andrews, we know now that Brian Stork's gone, he's going to be the center. Right guard's still a little bit of a question mark because they had some injury issues there, but they have a lot of experienced pieces that I think can step in and should be okay, whether it's Josh Klein, Shaq Mason, Jonathan Cooper. The last 2 guys have come back to practice recently, and they're headed in the right direction health-wise. And then at right tackle, it's been Marcus Cannon. I know Patriots fans love to hate Marcus Cannon, but he has had a very good preseason. He's been solid. I think the fact that he knows this is his job, I think the fact that he knows Sebastian Vollmer's not going to be coming back anytime soon and taking it away from him, I think that has helped with his confidence, and that's helped his play through the summer here. Now we'll see what happens when the games start up for real, but it's been a solid unit, top to bottom from the start of training camp, and I think that consistency, which is really what Scarnecchia has preached, is going to benefit them on the field.
These first 4 games of the season are obviously going to be very big to see what Jimmy Garoppolo's future is with the New England Patriots. So I'm just wondering if what you've seen so far from Garoppolo has any indication on if he is the next guy to step in when Brady eventually does call it a career, or if he's just simply another one of the Ryan Malletts or Brian Hoyers that we've seen over the years.
I don't think we know yet, which is weird to say because we've watched a lot of him. We've seen him through these preseason games. We've seen him the last 2 years in these preseason games. We've watched him all through training camp be treated as a starter, essentially. It's been Tom Brady, running the second unit for the most part through the practices that we've seen. And it's been Jimmy Garoppolo with the one. And, guys, I still don't know what to expect from this kid. It's been such an up-and-down camp. It's been an up-and-down preseason, in my opinion. I thought he was sort of disappointing in terms of his performance week one. And then in the second preseason game against the Bears, he lit the world on fire. And then last week against the Panthers, he was a mess. And there's no lighter way to put it. He looked jittery. He looked nervous. Looked like he didn't know what to do when he faced a pass rush. Some of those mistakes that he made were rookie-type mistakes, and I know he's a new quarterback, but he's not a rookie. He's a second-round pick. He's been in the offense for 3 years. I think it's okay to expect him to show some consistency, and I think he expects that from himself. We haven't seen it yet, and so I think we're going to see a little more of him in this Giants game this week because I would expect that the Patriots would want him to be able to put together a handful of drives, get a little bit of a rhythm going, and not have what happened at the end of that Panthers game for him to be the last taste of game action he gets before facing the Cardinals in week one. I could not tell you how he's going to perform. It's a total mystery to me, and again, it's a weird thing to say because we watched so much of him, but it would not surprise me if he had trouble putting any points on the board against the Cardinals. I also wouldn't be totally shocked if he threw for 300 yards and 2 touchdowns. It's just he has been that inconsistent, and he has also shown flashes at times of being a very good quarterback. So, who is he? What is he? I think we're going to get a feel for it a little bit better once we get through these first 4 weeks. But as of right now, I don't think there are any teams. Say the Minnesota Vikings come calling today. Teddy Bridgewater just went down with a season-ending knee injury. I don't think the Vikings would say, "Hey guys, I know you need Jimmy for the first 4 weeks of the season, but we're willing to give you a first-round pick and a contributing player to help you with your offensive line in case you need another tackle because we think Jimmy's that good." There's no way there's a team in the league that's feeling that way right now because they just haven't seen it from him on the field.
So let's just say he has a very good first 4 weeks of the season, and at the end of the season you have a lot of teams coming in with interest for possible trades for Garoppolo. Do you trade him or do you keep him and wait for Brady to retire?
I would trade him. Really in that scenario, which, again, I'm not sure is realistic, but say that is the case. Say he looks like a Pro Bowl quarterback for the first 4 weeks of the season. I still don't think he is going to match what Tom Brady will give you through 2019, which is how long Brady's locked up. And I just feel as though he will give you enough in return in a deal that it would be worth your while. There are teams all over the league that are absolutely quarterback starved and would be willing to pay a handsome price for a potential franchise guy. Brady is still going to be your franchise guy. Through 2019, we haven't seen any signs of decline. I'm not sure that he won't still be a very productive quarterback by the end of that contract, and he may want another deal after that, and he may be worth it. So would you be willing to pay Jimmy Garoppolo, whose contract is up after 2017, as a starting quarterback, as well as pay Tom Brady, as well as continue to pay Jacoby Brissett? Not that his salary is any kind of limiting factor, but he's going to be on your roster for the next few years as well, which, by the way, is taking up a valuable roster spot for a team that churns the bottom of its roster more than any other team in the NFL. That 53rd, 52nd, 51st roster spot is as important to them as it is to anybody else. And I don't think they relish the idea of having 3 quarterbacks on their roster at one time when they can only play one. I think they've drafted Jacoby Brissett. I think they like him a lot. I think they would be totally comfortable moving forward with him as Brady's backup, given what we've seen, what little we've seen from him, but what they saw from him in college and what they've seen from him since he's been with the Patriots. And I think they would be okay with trading Jimmy Garoppolo. Now, the question still remains, what do they get in return? But if it's a nice return, I don't think they'd hesitate to do the deal because Tom Brady's still their quarterback for the foreseeable future here.
So my biggest fear as a Patriots fan, I'm very confident in this year, even with Tom Brady being out the first 4 weeks. But going into the offseason, there were 4 guys on defense who I really wanted to see come back. Chandler Jones, Malcolm Butler, Dante Hightower, and Jamie Collins. Obviously, we traded Chandler Jones, and I always thought we would be able to keep 3 of the 4. What chance do you give the Patriots of having Collins, Hightower, and Butler on the roster for 2017-18 season?
I think there's a very good chance. And, those should be among the first 3 guys that get new deals. There's a lot of them that need new deals. I would throw Jabal Sheard into the mix. He's an important player on the defensive side of the football. It looks like he's, still very much in his prime. He's going to be a free agent after this season. Logan Ryan is probably, safely, if we're just talking about those 5, he's safely 5th on that list, but he's a good player as well. And he's going to need a new deal after this year. You can't sign everybody, but they have so much salary cap space that it's not going to be preventative for them to sign all 3 guys. And Collins and Hightower probably end up being the priority because Malcolm Butler is a restricted free agent. They can slap a first-round tender on him and, extend him with that, as long as another team isn't willing to give up a first-round pick to grab him. But he doesn't have a ton of leverage right now, and it wouldn't be until after 2017 that he would be unrestricted. So that's when you're really going to have to dedicate big bucks to him. But I think Collins and Hightower, 2 guys that are, almost literally the centerpieces of your defense in more ways than one. Young guys, again, in their primes. They shouldn't have any trouble bringing those guys back. I think they consider those guys leaders of the defense, and they want them around as long as possible.
All right. So Brady coming back week 5. What's his record going to be to start out with?
I think the Patriots should still be able to go 3-1, even with Jimmy Garoppolo looking as inconsistent as he has. I know that may sound like a contradiction, but that's how good I think this defense can be. I think this defense can carry this team through the first 4 weeks of the season, especially given the fact that they have a decent schedule, a favorable schedule, after week 1. You have 3 games at home against 3 beatable, in my opinion, teams. I know the Texans, feel like they're on the verge of something down there. They have a new quarterback who's looked pretty good in the preseason, and they certainly have a good defense. They still have the best defensive player in football in J.J. Watt. But I think that at home, the Patriots are very tough to beat. I think Garoppolo will have good enough offensive weapons around him to do enough to beat those teams. And I think those teams are going to have a hard time scoring against this Patriots defense. It was a defense that was top 10 in the league last year in terms of points allowed and in yards allowed. And I think if they don't improve upon that, I think they will feel like they've let themselves down. I think given where all these guys are in the arcs of their careers, they're all improving for the most part, and maybe aside from a guy like Rob Ninkovich, who's clearly headed towards the end of his career, but still a good player when healthy. They should be so well improved at so many positions that overall as a defense, they should be an even better unit. And I think, the fact that they are where they are on that side of the football at this time couldn't come at a better time because obviously I think Jimmy Garoppolo is going to need all the help he can get.
All right. So that pretty much does it for our sports-related questions.
Just want to say thank you for coming on, sharing wonderful insight about the Patriots and your career and your experiences. So thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks a lot. There you have it, folks. Phil Perry, Comcast Sports Net Patriots reporter. You can catch him on Quick Slants with Tommy Curran. And please give him a follow on Twitter at Phil A. Perry. Thank you very much, Phil.
Anytime, guys. Thanks for having me, and stay in touch.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Joe, do you have any thoughts on what he shared with us?
I thought he had some great insight. However, as I said on previous shows, I do disagree with his statement about LeGarrette Blount. And I'm also surprised what he said about Brandon Bolden, given how versatile he is in the running game. He's not really great or even that good at anything, especially in the offensive game, passing and running. But he's very good on special teams. So that's a very surprising cut, and I'm surprised he said that Brandon Bolden would be a more likely candidate to get cut from the 53-man roster rather than LeGarrette Blount.
So what do you exactly disagree with about his LeGarrette Blount that he's going to make the roster? Because Sadly enough, LeGarrette Blount probably is the best runner on this Patriots team.
Well, yeah.
He's awful. I've supported you in that argument, but
Joe,
there's just nobody else.
I think that fundamentally, what matters is, do you still think the Patriots' running game, for practical purposes, is just obsolete? It doesn't matter.
I do. However, with Dion Lewis going down again and requiring another knee surgery, I don't think that the running back position is overrated. I think that the traditional running game of just going between the tackles and rushing for 4 yards, with Tom Brady as your quarterback, is obsolete. Of course, when you have a guy like Adrian Peterson in Minnesota and a guy like Terry Bridgewater, who I said earlier off the air, is just nothing. Like, he doesn't hurt you, he doesn't help you, he just manages a game similarly to Alex Smith. So when you have a guy like Adrian Peterson, then yes, the running game is important and you can run your offense based off it. But for 30 other teams in the league who don't have that type of running back, it's very pretty obsolete. But Dion Lewis is very important, and having him in the pass game, that is our running game. Like Phil Perry said, Kevin Falk and Danny Woodhead, and now Lewis and James White, those are very important cogs of the offense. So I don't want to underestimate or give them less credit than they deserve. But the traditional running game that LeGarrette Blount does in the Patriots offense, not that important.
Do you think the Patriots should attempt to find not quite a superstar Hall of Fame type running back, but at least something that's
better than Blount?
I would have taken a flyer on Arian Foster. I know he's been hurt and he's reached the magic number of 30, which is the usual expiration date for running backs. But bring him in like you brought in Steven. It's true. Bring him in like you brought in Steven Jackson. Try him out in some preseason games. And if he doesn't work, he doesn't work. The financial risk wasn't that much. Don't give him a lot of guaranteed money. So I think that would have been a better option than Blount. So there you go there.
So I mean, I understand the running game is kind of fading away, but I still think having a capable running back on your team it's a good balance.
It's just
because
options,
it just opens up more options. Because when you have the Patriots, they're going to throw probably 80% of the time, but and defenses will play to that. Like, they're going to drop more guys in zone or just double team more guys, but having a run game disables them from doing that. It doesn't have to be a great run game, just a respectable run game.
But I don't think LeGarrette Blount is a respectable run game.
He's not.
Even Stephen Ridley from a few years ago,
yes.
or Ben Jarvis Green Ellis, he rushed for 1,000 yards about 5-6 years ago, and he never fumbled, and that was the problem with Ridley. Having a guy like that is very good for your offense. It adds another dimension into a very potent offense, which we have. But LeGarrette Blount can't give you the 4 yards per carry with no fumbles that Green Ellis gave, and he's certainly not as explosive as Ridley was.
Yeah, that is all you need, but I'm just saying the run game is not as obsolete as you're portraying it to be.
Do you think that the Pats defense could carry Garoppolo to 3 wins, or do you think it'd be more on Garoppolo's success?
I think that Garoppolo can be a Teddy Bridgewater, as I said. Just don't screw things up, and I think that we can go 3-1. Obviously, I still think we have a chance against the Cardinals. I'm not writing that game off. I think it's going to be very tough. But look at the offenses who we're playing. We're playing Brock Osweiler, who we still don't know about, and we're playing
Tyrod
Taylor and Ryan Tannehill. So none of those guys scare me, and I think that we can win those games on defense in a 17-14 fashion, and I think we should be fine. I think our defense is very good. It's the best defense we've had since, I think, 2004.
Yeah, it could be, but I mean, the name of the game in football is you have to score points to win. And with Garoppolo, if he puts up a bad game, they're in trouble. Even if it's against a team like the Texans, because the Texans do have a very good defense too, with J.J. Watt and Vince Wilfork and obviously other guys. So I mean, I could see the Texans giving them a problem in New England. So that would result in a 2-2 record.
I do see that. I think that our defense is good enough. And one of my favorite answers that Phil gave us was the Malcolm Brown.
Yeah.
Because obviously I might watch a few minutes of a preseason game, but I'm not watching practices. I'm not watching scrimmages. So I'm not able to see what guys are doing. So when you have, and that's what's so great about having Phil Perry on, a guy who's there watching and seeing everything that's going on. And for him to give you his report on Malcolm Brown, it's very encouraging. And I think that if he can step up, that's just fill the Wilfork role. And they didn't want, didn't they? He said the Patriots wanted Knighton to not fill the Wilfork role.
Knighton isn't really Will Fork. Knighton is a separate style of play where Knighton likes to get after the passer. Will Fork was just perfectly fine with using his massive body to just take up
Knighton's
two blockers.
just as big, though.
Yeah, but they play different. They play differently.
He's more like Albert Hainsworth to compare him when that was another debacle of a signing that Bill Belichick made, but that similar of that essence where he's a defensive tackle who can get you 8 sacks a year when he's primed up. So,
Yeah, so, just like Phil said, you got to be patient. We're just going to have to see because Garoppolo is he's really an enigma right now, and it's going to be interesting to see how things turn out with him. Not really much else we have to talk about.
By the way, I'm just going to get this in here. So, obviously, these first 4 weeks of the season are going to be big to alter people's opinions of Garoppolo. But from what I've seen so far, I don't think he's the right guy to follow Brady. I think you trade him once you get the chance to. He's very shaky.
Okay.
I just don't see it with him.
So, I'm not ready to write off Garoppolo, but if he does perform well and above our expectations, and if you can get a first-round draft pick from it,
you have to
from
do
a team like Minnesota, who he said probably won't right now.
Yep.
But with Teddy Bridgewater reportedly being out for the year, if Minnesota's willing to give you a plug-and-play player on the line and a first-round or even a second-round pick, I would strongly consider doing that. Especially with, I believe, Brady is ageless and timeless, so I think that he does have another 3 years left. And Garoppolo, even in this 4 games, look at Matt Flynn. He had one good game for 2 years with the Packers, and he got a huge deal from the Seahawks. And we're not going to be giving Garoppolo $10 million a year to be the backup for the next 3 years. So he's going to walk either way. That's another reason to consider trading him, because I don't want to push Brady out the door while he still has some very good years left.
And another point that Phil brought up is the Patriots usually carry only 2 quarterbacks on the roster. So trading Garoppolo, well, obviously when Brady comes back, you trade Garoppolo, and then that allows you to keep Brady and Brissett, the kid they drafted out of NC State. So there's their 2 quarterbacks, and they could invest that other roster spot in a special teams player or an extra linebacker.
Hopefully a running back.
I don't see it.
No.
Hopefully.
I just have a few questions for you guys.
Yeah,
so
sure.
right now, what do you see? Obviously, we're not trading him because
Not right now. Not right now.
If let's say Tom Brady was magically reinstated by Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and he could play the first 4 games, and we could trade Garoppolo, what do you see his value being? What could we get for him right now?
Right now,
I just feel like the other general managers of the NFL would be way too apprehensive to make a decision, and that they wouldn't get any off. The Pats wouldn't see any offers.
I think you definitely get an offer,
Yeah.
but I'm waiting on Garoppolo because right now I don't think his value is really all that much.
We don't even know.
I can't even pinpoint it.
You can't, yeah.
Maybe a 3rd-round pick, maybe, but I think at the end of the season it could grow into a 2nd-round pick or maybe a 1st-round pick.
Or it could grow into nothing if you just
Yeah.
And that leads into my question.
You just don't know.
Yep.
And that, because I see right now, you could get what you put in. You spent a 2nd-rounder on him. You could get a 2nd-rounder. And my lead-up questions would be, if you had a great 4 games, and if you had a bad 4 games, what would you see we could get for him? That was kind of where I was going with those.
I mean, if he has a great 4 games, I think it's obviously a 1st-round pick.
Yeah, if
I don't
he
think
goes
you
4-0.
settle for anything less than a 1st-round pick. But I think the need to trade him is great because, as you said, Brady is ageless. So I'd say Brady has 3 more good seasons. Garoppolo is a free agent, I believe, after next season. So what if, say, Josh McDaniels gets a head coaching job somewhere in the next 2 years? Do you think he lures Garoppolo over to his team and then we just lose Garoppolo for nothing? I mean, I think it's something to consider trading him right now. I know his value is not all that great, but it's better than losing him for nothing.
Oh, that's true, and I think that he's shown flashes, and this is a quarterback-driven league and a quarterback-starved league. It's the haves and the have-nots, and you need to have an all-time defense like the Broncos did to be able to carry a subpar quarterback.
Yep.
So I think that if he doesn't have to be throwing for 300 yards a game and 3 touchdowns. If he goes 200 yards a game, 2 touchdowns, maybe only throws 2 or 3 picks in those 4 games, we could get something significant for him just because teams are so starved, especially a team like the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah, if you can limit him in those first 4 games to not show too much. Say he's being an average quarterback. He's not doing anything too great, nothing too bad. So I say you try to limit him a bit and kind of hide his negatives, his negative side. Yeah, hide his flaws. So then maybe that'll increase his value towards the end of the season. We're like, all right, so we know that this Garoppolo kid is nothing special. But maybe other teams will be like, well, we haven't seen anything bad from him. So maybe they'll throw his first-round pick or a
Yeah.
second-round pick at him.
Or maybe, another sort of
I
asset.
think you have to trade Garoppolo.
You just
Even not right now, but I think at the end of the season you have to trade him, even if he's bad.
or step back and make some offers at the very
Yeah.
least. I mean,
Yeah.
you just have to hope that he doesn't go out these 4 games and just plays like total garbage and then just demolishes all trade value there is, because that's probably the
Even
worst
if there
case.
is, you got to trade him. You can't push Brady out the door if he has years left. You can't do it.
And I'll ask a question that I posed to Mr. Perry. How surprised are you that Terrence Knighton got cut, given that he was probably their biggest acquisition other than Martellus Bennett?
Look, that's the thing. The Patriots don't care about your name. They just care about how you play. They don't care how much you're making. If you can play, you're going to stay on the team. And Knighton wasn't playing the way they wanted him to play, so he's off the roster now.
The thing that got to me is the fact that he was Mr. Perry said he was in very good shape.
He was in good shape,
and
yeah.
that's what's surprising, because my biggest worry about him was that he was going to get out of shape and lazy, kind of like Hainsworth and other acquisitions we've made in the past. So the fact that he was in good shape.
Maybe he just took things for
It's
granted.
a good sign, but he's just not the right fit. That's plain and simple.
I have a feeling he could do some damage. He's going to get another deal in
He's
the
a
league.
good player. Yeah, he is a
He
good
could do
player.
some
He
damage
could go
to us.
somewhere else.
He could go
a
back to
team-
Denver.
Go back to Denver, to a team where he fits. He doesn't fit in the Patriots
That
defense.
scares me. You bring back Knighton with Wolf
Yeah,
and
he
Miller.
is a good
and-
player. He's just not the right one Belichick wanted.
Well, and Bill we trust.
And Bill we
Yeah,
trust.
I mean, it's not even a case of like a good move by Bill. He just simply wasn't doing his job in the defense, so they got rid of him so that Malcolm Brown and Alan Branch can do their job correctly.
All right. Is that it for you guys?
I think I'm good.
Shorter podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Good night.